What is up, Packer fans? I'm Nariah Chapik, host of Portland Packers podcast. Thank you for being here, and thank you for checking out this video. It's late Saturday night. This probably won't air until Sunday morning, but I am excited. I am excited because the roster was officially cut from 80 players down to 53. We are 1 week away from football, which I didn't know if this day was going to come. It's been a long haul, but I'm going to give you a instant reaction, quick reaction, no script, breaking down the Packers 53-man roster. Guys, it is time to pour ourselves another Packers podcast. So as always, or real quick, I should say, before we get started, I need to apologize. I understand I have 920 of you guys subscribed to this channel. Currently, it has been, I was a little bit higher. It did wane a little bit. I lost some subscribers. Training camp was real weird. I don't have a whole lot of excuses outside of the fact that I just wasn't really feeling the football spirit for a lot of July and August. It was a weird off season. I wasn't entirely sure whether or not I wanted to pursue or move forward with this podcast. But at the end of the day, my excitement, my energy, my love for the Green Bay Packers all started to percolate and boil over the last couple of days. So I did want to do a video. I wanted to get back out there. It seems like the last couple of videos I've said that consistently. But hey, like I said, 1 week away from now, the Packers and the Vikings will be facing off. I'm all on board. I am ready for the upcoming season 100%. I hope that feeling of a regular season really sets in and I can enjoy all 16 weeks and hopefully the playoffs and really dive into this. Keep doing Monday night live Q&As, do Friday last minute final thoughts on the games. But today's video, this particular video, I'm going to dive into the 53-man roster, and there were surprises. I was getting notifications on my phone throughout the entire day, and I haven't really dived into it. I swear I haven't even really looked at the roster and the cuts until at this point. So we're going to go unscripted. We're going to look at these roster lineups. So we're going to look at the cuts. I'm going to start with the cuts because that will probably paint the picture a little bit better. And we'll start with a couple of people that were cut. So cornerback Deshaun Amos was cut. Linebacker Barnes. I think a big surprise, or maybe not a big surprise, but a name that we know throughout is tight end Evan Bayless. 4 tight ends made it to the roster, looking at Lewis, Tanyan, Degura, and Sternberger. So I kind of predicted that we would only have 4 tight ends as we headed into the season. First notable name to me is Reggie Begelton. Wouldn't be surprised. I'm probably going to put my foot in my mouth because I haven't really dived into this a whole lot, but I wouldn't be surprised if Begelton at wide receiver does end up making the practice squad. Probably the same goes for Evan Bayless as well. We have a safety in Henry Black, a tackle, a running back, Demaria Crockett. Some of these names, I mean, Tipia Gallier. We have a center, a guard. I mean, there's some names that, quite frankly, I'm not entirely familiar with because it was a weird preseason. We didn't have preseason games where some of these names stood out. But then I get to the name I think that we all are aware of is wide receiver Jake Kumerow. Now, this one was a surprise. If you didn't get all your Packer news or cuts and releases and whatnot from Saturday, I guarantee you stumbled upon the fact that Jake Kumerow no longer is on the Packers roster. And I think as I dive into who actually made the team, I mean, 5 wide receivers in total made the team. So the fact that is just the number of wide receivers is a little bit of a head scratcher. But Jake, his time was up. I mean, he's had a number of seasons now where he's been the 4th, 5th, 6th string wide receiver on the Packers roster. That's not discrediting his heroic plays that he had against the Arizona Cardinals in the playoffs. But his time was finally up. This isn't too much of a surprise to me personally because he never really developed into that number 2 or number 3 wide receiver. But I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't get picked up by another team. And if he doesn't get picked up by another team, he should end up on the practice squad. He is a great player to keep on the roster. Next notable name I'd say is Alex Light at the tackle guard position. The reason I bring up Alex Light is not so much because of his performance. I don't think he's always been the most consistent or great player along that offensive line, but he has been on the roster for quite a while. When Bulaga went out, they actually looked at Alex Light to fill in his position. Couldn't quite fill in that position. That's when we ended up going out and getting Jared Valdir last year. I'll touch upon his name once more here, I'm sure, in the very near future. But Alex Light no longer on the team. And going through the rest of the lineup, I look at maybe another wide receiver in Darius Shepard, not making the roster. He was a preseason stud last year. Actually made the roster, the 53-man roster last year over Alan Lazard, which that just didn't work out in his favor this time. Malik Turner, who they brought in off of free agency. And then you have probably the most surprise name for me personally was running back Dexter Williams. Now, the reason why that's a surprise to me is Matt LaFleur loves his running backs. He is a run-first type of offense. That's why if you're in fantasy and you take Aaron Rodgers, it's probably not going to work out well for you. They only got 5 wide receivers. This is going to be a run-heavy type of offense where Rodgers can step in and do what Rodgers does when needed. But Dexter Williams was a draft pick from just last year. He was, I believe, a 6th-round draft pick, which isn't the highest on the board. But it was Williams, it was Aaron Jones, and then it was Dexter Williams, Jamal, and then Dexter Williams on that roster last year. I thought this guy had a lot of upside. I liked his footage on college films. I think he's going to fly under the radar enough not to get picked up by another team, and he should end up on our practice squad. But that one's a little bit of a surprise. I think when you have a draft pick from just a year ago and he's not good enough to make that roster, that should be a little bit of a red flag. And then you have linebacker Tim Williams is probably the last notable name, brought over from Baltimore last year, actually. Played with Zadarius Smith in Baltimore in his previous time there, but could not make the final 53-man roster. Now, a couple of things about this is that the Packers did place Curtis Bolton on the reserve physically unable to perform list. Same with another running back, Patrick Taylor. But the Packers are allowed to, and all NFL teams are allowed to, carry 16 players on the practice squad this upcoming season versus 12, which was the norm. With COVID, they're taking extra precautions. They're expecting possible players to miss games or miss time. So teams will be able to carry a lot of these players over onto their practice squad. And will be interesting. I mean, really 11 of these players will eventually not end up on the Packers roster, but I'd anticipate that a lot of these guys will, and maybe they'll be able to pick up some other guys along the way. So where does that leave us? I'm going to take a drink break, real quick drink break. Where does that leave us with our 53-man roster? Well, first and foremost, let's start with the quarterback group. Of course, you have Aaron Rodgers. He's going to be our quarterback for at least 3 or 4 more years. Could be longer because the Jordan Love thing didn't go all that well throughout training camp. But behind Aaron Rodgers is Tim Boyle. It's not, it came as a little bit of a surprise, I guess you could say. As the training camp went on, Jordan Love was still struggling. He's still young. He is actually going to be our 3rd-string quarterback. So any disbeliefs that Love was going to take over the franchise, you can kind of put those to rest. It does look like Aaron Rodgers, Tim Boyle, and then Jordan Love will be the depth chart order for all intents and purposes. But one thing I really want to say about Aaron Rodgers before I move on from the quarterback group is that I love a lot of these reports that have been coming out of training camp that he is back to loving football. It hasn't always been the case up until, well, I'd say within the last 4 or 5 years, I've questioned. And I don't know if this is hearsay or if this is a popular thought, but I have questioned Aaron Rodgers' leadership and what players have said about him in the past, or just how he goes about his business. Now, that doesn't discredit his one-liners or the RELAX, or I think we can run the table. Those are really very niche moments in Rodgers' career where he was able to kind of set calm or make the locker room move and perform better than they may have already performed. But what I want to talk about with Rodgers is that he's out there having fun. I think this whole Jordan Love fiasco that happened with him being drafted, I think he's taking a whole new approach to this. I think he's realizing that his years are limited. his time in Green Bay could be limited. And he's going back out there and he's just enjoying the game. There's been videos of him just playing jokes with Tim Boyle and having fake fight sessions. There's been some razzing of Jordan Love and some of his throwing performances. Just his conversations, his attitude heading into the season. He's more comfortable in the offense. There's a lot to like. I think Rodgers will have a far and beyond better season than he had last year, where there were inaccuracies in his game. And in case you missed it, he went all the way back to 2010 footage of his preparation and his game footage, and it's starting to mirror some of his tendencies when he was only a starting quarterback for 2-3 seasons, and starting to mirror those tendencies and bring them back to this upcoming season. So that's very exciting. I'm loving what I'm hearing about Aaron Rodgers. He's ready to play. I'm ready to cheer. And let's move to the running back groups. Now, probably the biggest, I'm going to just keep saying biggest surprise. I guess my biggest surprise with the running back group, it's not the names on the list, it's the amount of running backs. So you have Aaron Jones, obviously number one, Jamal Williams, who had a tremendous training camp, and I think will be a underdog type of running back that we are all overlooking, because number three on that list is A.J. Dillon. And if you haven't seen that guy's thighs, go ahead and Google A.J. Dillon thighs, and the guy is just absolutely ripped in those legs area. I cannot duplicate what he has done because I have not put in the work like A.J. Dillon. I'm really excited about all three of these guys. I think all three could be huge contributors to this Packers offense. And then you have your fourth running back / wide receiver wild card in Tyler Ervin. He was brought in last year, blew the roof out of what we were able to do as far as our special teams. So I'm really excited that they kept him on the roster. Obviously, with the absence of who did we lose for our kick returner? He went out to Oakland. What the hell was his name? Can't think of it. Trevor Davis. Trevor Davis is what I was thinking about. So because Trevor Davis is no longer on the roster, he was the kick return, punt return kind of guy that we had. So Tyler Ervin makes the roster. Looking at the wide receiving group, another surprise. There's only 5 of these guys. 3 running backs officially, 5 wide receivers, and we're looking at Davante Adams, of course, Allen Lazard, of course. But the name that we all will be talking about is Marquez Valdes-Scantling. He was the number one, bar none, the best player or performer in training camp. And I can't tell you how excited I am to see if that can translate onto the field come the regular season. We were all out in just in the gutter on MVS last year. He was lacking confidence. He was dropping footballs. It was not a very pretty sight, but this is something that I will take away from this, is that it wasn't very different for Davante Adams. Davante Adams was on that bubble heading into his 3rd year that maybe we should drop this guy, cut this guy. He drops everything, no pun intended, but yes, there is a pun intended. Now, maybe that can be Marquez Valdes-Scantling. He just needs the confidence, and maybe he'll go out there and have a great performance. Outside of him, though, then we go to Equanimeous St. Brown, and then the very last name on that list is Malik Taylor. Now, EQ St. Brown obviously missed all of last season. He's also coming into his 3rd year. He was drafted the same year as MVS. Curious on how that's going to play out, too. I hate that there was no preseason because I cannot gauge anything on this roster, but I'm going to have to take Goody and LaFleur on their word that this is a good passing or offensive structure, and that goes with the tight ends as well. 4 tight ends. I had a feeling it would be 4 tight ends all from the get-go. Obviously, Mercedes Lewis, when we re-signed him in the offseason, I felt like he would be a lock. So we have Lewis. We have Robert Tonyan, who is showing up 2nd on that depth chart. I think that he will get a lot more snaps and a lot more production than Jay Sternberger, who also made the roster. And then you have your 3rd-round draft pick from this offseason in Josiah DeGuara. So 4 tight ends make up the group, and then we have 9 offensive linemen. I'm not going to go through every name on that list, but there is some uncertainty in that right tackle spot. And I'm looking at you, Brian Bulaga, because you left and headed to Los Angeles to play with the Chargers, and it's been a battle throughout training camp with right tackle Rick Wagner and Billy Turner. So both these guys are struggling with injuries. I'll get into my final thoughts video on Friday about whether or not Billy Turner will be a game time decision or what's going to come of that. But I brought up the name Jared Veldheer earlier, and I think that is a guy that the Packers strongly need to consider bringing onto this roster. Yes, we have 9 linemen on this roster, but David Bakhtiari, he's locked down on the left. Elton Jenkins should be right next to him. You have Corey Linsley somewhere in that mix, probably right there as well. Lane Taylor. Those are your four guys that I have a lot of faith in. And then it gets to the Billy Turner, Rick Wagner competition, and then we have Lucas Patrick. I didn't say I was going to name all their names, so I'm going to stop before I hit the final two names. But I think they got to go out there and strongly consider bringing back Jared Valdir. He was an absolute stud when Bulaga was struggling with some late season injuries, and they were unsure about his future. He stepped in. He's got experience. He's not signed by any team. You probably don't have to pay him a whole lot of money. I would love to see that happen. But that brings the grand total on offense of a 53-man roster to 25. And then we have the defense. So Kenny Clark on that defensive line, Dean Lowry, Kingsley Kiki, Tyler Lancaster, and Montravius Adams. There's no surprises on that defensive line whatsoever. Nobody lost their position. Nobody jumped into that group. Obviously, Kenny Clark signed his offseason contract. He's going to be a Packer for a long time. Really excited to see what Kiki can do in the upcoming season. And then also Montravius Adams, who's kind of been a little bit of an up and down defensive lineman, but hopefully this group has improved. We move to the inside linebacker. You have Christian Kirksey. That is our upgrade over Blake Martinez, which was sad to see go, but I'm loving everything I hear about Kirksey. Oren Burks, Ty Summers, and Kamal Martin round up that inside linebacker group. We're really going to be looking at Oren. We're really going to be looking at Ty Summers in this upcoming first couple of weeks because Kamal Martin, our, I believe, 6th round draft pick, will be missing some time. He was actually the forerunner coming into the end of training camp that he would be the starter. But other than that, some new names, some returning faces. That inside linebacker group is going to have a lot of attention on it, on whether it can help stop the run, because we can't leave it all up to the defensive line. Outside linebackers, obviously you have Zadarius and Preston Smith. You cannot say defense or Packers defense without those two names somehow coming up in the conversation. Rashawn Gary is the number 2 most popular player throughout training camp. Super excited to see him get out in the field and play. I think you go back and you look at how he was a first-round draft pick. They took him very high in the draft. He was very quiet in his first season. Some people maybe thought that we had wasted his pick. Maybe me. I don't think I really threw him under the bus quite that much. At least I hope not. But he got to spend the first year of his career studying under Zadarius and Preston. I expect Rashawn Gary to have not only a good season, but a very great season in the upcoming year. And then you have Randy Ramsey and Jonathan Garvin, a little bit of unknown names on that position, but I think our outside linebacker group is looking really good. Cornerbacks, Jair, Kevin King, Chandon Sullivan makes the roster again. Josh Jackson squeezes into the roster again. This is one of those maybe we should trade him away types of player. He hasn't always been Mr. Consistent, but I'm liking what I'm seeing out of Josh Jackson. Kadar Holman, who I'm still not sold on Kadar Holman. I must be blind when it comes to cornerback talent, because the Packers not only drafted him, but they kept him on the roster. Kadar, here's to a great season. I hope you prove me wrong. And then last but not least is Kabion Ento, who was an undrafted free agent, played a big role in our season last year. We had the safety. You have Amos, you have Savage, you have Raven Green, Will Redmond, Vernon Scott's the only new name on that section for a grand total of 25 on defense. And then we have Crosby, J.K. Scott, and of course Hunter Bradley. That special teams unit has been very solid and very cohesive and consistent over the last couple of years. So there's your 53 men on that roster. Not a lot of different names, not a lot of new names, and that's probably what I took away from this more than anything else. This team is very similar to what we had heading into that NFC Championship game against the San Francisco 49ers. They obviously did not address the run. They did not address really a whole lot outside of its mental preparation, and we have the right pieces. We just need to coach it better and be prepared better. So I'll be really bold to see whether or not that pays off this upcoming season. Yes, there are some new names from draft picks on that roster, but at the end of the day, this is just Matt LaFleur's second season head coaching Green Bay. And we're going to have to find out right away in 1 week whether or not this is going to take off with the ground running and hit the ground running, or if this is going to be more of the same, which more of the same isn't bad, but we have to get over a hump. And I think we'll see a more dominant defense. I think we'll see a much more productive offense. Let me know what your surprises were about this roster. I'm surprisingly losing my voice. I haven't done a podcast in weeks, and already I'm losing my voice. So, guys, I will be back. I will be back on Friday. If you love the content, hit that like and subscribe button. You'll get the little bell notification. It's all beautiful. It's all grand. But on Friday, I'll give you my final thoughts as we head into week 1 against the Minnesota Vikings. I, of course, I like the odds of the Packers. I'm not going to root against them at all this year. So until next time, until we meet again, I will see you on the internet. Thanks for watching.